These are the new cameras, and as you can see, they are powering them up right now. And these things are gonna tax every car on the road. People are so upset by this. 2 different groups of New Yorkers have filed lawsuits to stop these things from going live. On top of that, the city's been caught installing other cameras in parts of the city like this right here, which aren't supposed to be subject to any tolls or taxes. What in the world could those be for?
This big piece of equipment right here has already been installed on 2 northbound avenues.
Congestion pricing, good thing or bad thing?
I think it's taking a lot of money.
It's hard for everyday commuters. It's too expensive.
Do you think it's confusing?
It is. This isn't about cleaner air. This isn't about less traffic. This is about nothing more than money.
As a New Yorker, congestion is a problem, but the way that they're implementing it is half-baked, and it's unfair.
Enough is enough already. It really is.
Negative impact. More pollution in all of our boroughs, more traffic in all of our boroughs, quality of life goes down, less parking.
That's another license plate reader, but it's facing the right way, fortunately, and that's because it's set up to catch traffic heading into the congestion zone. But the black cameras are set up to catch traffic leaving the congestion zone, which isn't supposed to get taxed. And the tolls the city plans on charging with these are already highly controversial, and they've even been caught installing them in parts of town they promised would remain toll-free. But the reason the city is so stoked about these things is because the dilapidated subway, which is run by the MTA, well, that same MTA is gonna get all the money that these things generate. They want to make improvements, they want to upgrade service, and they're hoping that the congestion fees charged on roads like this are going to incentivize drivers to take the train instead of driving their cars. And they're convinced that this is the best way to do it. And let's face it, these things are inescapable. Look, there's 2 police cars under there. The thing reads your front plate and your back plate. If you're on the road in any capacity, these things are going to charge you. They're basically like money-generating boxes. But as we'll soon see, 2 lawsuits have been filed to put these things out of commission before this scheme kicks in. And the people filing those lawsuits speculate that these little guys are gonna cause way more harm than good, and we'll get into that, as well as why new cameras are showing up in locations where the city said there wouldn't be any tolls. But listen to how much money average New Yorkers are gonna have to pay if they wanna drive.
Passenger vehicles would be charged $15 to enter the congestion zone. Those tolls would be charged once per day and would be in effect between 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. on weekdays and 9 a.m.
So most drivers, $15 every time they enter this part of the city. This big white truck will pay $24 when it enters, and a 2-wheeler with a license plate will pay half what a car pays. Pretty soon they'll make us all wear a license plate on our forehead so they can just charge us for existing. That was a joke, but what's not a joke is the fact that this plan, it's supposed to raise $1 billion a year, but some people think it might raise over 3 times that much money, which could mean the tolls are way too much. In New York, minimum wage is $16 an hour, and if you commute by car, you've just lost an hour of work. Also, this lamb over rice is $10, but that's like the same price as the congestion fee, so now your lunch costs more. But now the question is, could all of this financial pain and suffering from every single car on the road be worth it? Could we end up getting world-class transit out of this thing? There are some people who think so.
A spokesman for the Riders Alliance, a group that advocates for public transit, called it a win-win-win for transit, traffic, and air quality.
So before we move on and figure out why the city's got secret toll readers set up all over town, it's important to understand that proponents of this are just so convinced that it's going to transform the subway, and part of me hopes they're right because I ride the subway and it's a total mess. And look at this, it's predicted that congestion is going to drop by about 17%, which should lower pollution in the actual congestion zone where we are right now. But there are many New Yorkers who aren't sold on this plan because even though it helps one part of the city, they say it doesn't help the other parts of the city, and that's why there are 2 lawsuits right now. But there might even be more lawsuits because hidden toll readers have been popping up all over town, and the city's being a little quiet on the details. So these are the controversial cameras which aren't supposed to be charging drivers because they're on an avenue where traffic is headed out of the toll zone, not in. And you see this truck right here? There's a wire coming out of it going into this box, and this box is connected to the cameras, which means they're programming them right now. Look at all those servers and stuff in there. Those are definitely gonna be able to do a whole bunch of things. Also notice how these cameras are painted stealth black, maybe to hide them.
This big piece of equipment right here has already been installed on 2 northbound avenues. So it raised the question, will drivers ultimately be charged for leaving the congestion zone as well as entering it?
Wow, this literally raises so many red flags, but residents want to know, if these aren't going to charge a toll, why is the city spending money to put them in? And since they look so similar to the other cameras, would they ever be turned on in the future? Or will they start charging drivers for entering and for leaving the congestion zone at some point? We aren't sure, but the city says there's nothing to worry about.
The MTA telling Fox 5 the gantries installed at these locations are, quote, for data collection to assist in understanding the movement of...
Wow, data collection. That makes me feel so much better. I mean, Facebook and Google and Apple already have our data. Now the city's gonna have it too. But really, we've got no choice but to believe the city at this point because they're the ones that operate these. But some people are worried the data these are gonna generate and collect is gonna inform the city of how much extra money they are missing out on by not turning them on, and then eventually elected officials will vote for them to be turned on, and then they'll serve the purpose that they could be serving now if it weren't illegal.
We raised the question, will the MTA at some point in the future be able to use these gantries to charge drivers leaving the congestion area? No tolls are contemplated for vehicles exiting the congestion zone.
Well, there you have it. There are no plans for these to become toll readers at this point in time. That's what the city says. But look at this. The cameras have been apparently popping up on the toll-free highways. And this goes back to the idea that the city is going to learn how much money they're missing out on the toll-free highways. The work truck's gone. It looks like this battle station is now fully operational. But before we move on to the reasons people are suing the city over this stuff, the law says that they cannot be used to collect a toll in this part of town. And that was passed by the state legislature, and the state legislature would have to reconvene. So for now, drivers have some measure of protection against any extra fees. But you saw all the expensive stuff in that box right there. With the flip of a switch, these things could have an entirely different purpose every single day. But luckily, there are some lawmakers in New York that understand that people are completely fed up with the secrecy and the supposed deception going on around these things, and they're not being quiet about it.
This isn't about cleaner air. This isn't about less traffic. This is about nothing more than money. Money being thrown into the black hole that is the MTA.
Okay, so before we get into these extremely strong criticisms of congestion pricing, it's important to understand that these lawmakers, they're outside the city. They're in Long Island, where a lot of people on the road today drive in from and are gonna get hit with the fees. So their outrage reflects the views of the people that they represent. Also, it's worth mentioning that the state of New Jersey is suing as well to try and get this overturned, because many New Jersey residents also come into the city along with businesses. And calling this whole scheme a waste of money, I mean, hopefully that turns out to be incorrect. Hopefully the MTA gets this money and does the right thing with it and improves the subway and makes it a joy to use and totally transforms the city. But the MTA's operating budget in 2022 was over $19 billion. And $19 billion, that's a lot of money for the subway to look like absolute trash and to smell like trash and to have trash kind of piling up everywhere. The cars are old, the stations are falling apart. You can't even see, it's so dark down there. Not to mention the trains are often delayed, overcrowded, not on time, shutting down when you're in them, leaving people stranded. And we've got ourselves a real clash of opinions here, because the people who are against this are really against it, but the people who are for it, they're really for it, and these two opinions cannot be worked out in any meaningful way.
I can't find parking spots after 11 a.m. With congestion pricing, more people on the train, where are they going to put the cars?
My small businesses, my young professionals who are trying to get out of their parents' house. Enough is enough already. It really is.
And you know, at the end of the day, real people are going to be really affected by this. It's going to have consequences. Many people are afraid that drivers who are looking for parking are going to dump their cars on streets outside of the congestion zone, because they're gonna try to drive to a location where they can get public transit, which is very unreliable, and take it for as few stops as possible. For example, this car is from New Jersey. Now, I don't know what part of New Jersey they're from, but there are parts of New Jersey that are about a 10-minute train ride into the city, and if they live, let's say, half an hour away from that, they might drive and then take the train the rest of the way. Also, there are a lot of companies based outside of the city that do renovation work and deliver cylinders filled with gas. If I saw a guy get on the subway with a tank like that, I would get off the train immediately. You can't bring that stuff on the train. It even says hazmat right on the side of the truck. And you know who also has to pay these tolls? Firefighters, ambulance drivers, essential workers who the city relies on for important jobs. They don't get any kind of discount and they have to pay it. Worse yet, the less you make, the more that toll is gonna sting. If you're rich and you live in this super expensive apartment tower, $15 is nothing. Who cares?
The MTA has the final say.
We've got to stop letting the MTA increase their own income without looking at their expenses. We'll just turn to the taxpayers again and hit them again.
So before we move on to the lawsuits, and if there's a chance that this thing is going to be stopped, it seems that the main complaint people have is that the MTA is just amazing at wasting millions of dollars every single year. And with a bloated budget, there might be some truth to this, but the reason there are now multiple lawsuits over congestion pricing is because people claim it's not going to deliver on its promises. And that's a big deal because congestion pricing is now the law. And the city is all excited for all of the extra money it's going to make. They can't wait. It's going to be raining. But it's starting in just a few months. Do these lawsuits have time to get through and be effective? The people filing them think so.
We have something called the Environmental Protection Act, and there's a process, and we realize that they're using 2016 census data. They're using transportation data from over 8 years ago.
Okay, I didn't know this, but before we get into whether or not this lawsuit can work, the woman who's suing, apparently she sued Mariah Carey over the title Queen of Christmas and won. There's Mariah Carey. I wonder what her lawyers were up to. But at least we're talking about someone filing a lawsuit who's been to court before and come out on top. And what's interesting about this is that anyone who wants to can sue the EPA for failing to act to protect the environment. But what exactly is she suing for?
The congestion plan doesn't eliminate congestion as so much as it pushes it out and north, and it causes other issues sociologically, environmentally, financially.
Okay, so the thing she's suing over is the thing most New Yorkers who aren't rich enough to live here in the congestion zone are extremely worried about, and it has to do with the environment. And that's because although pollution is likely to decrease in this part of town where people in this apartment building live, all of the pollution that was taking place here is just gonna get pushed out to areas that don't have the congestion toll, like the Bronx and Brooklyn and Queens. And look at this, asthma rates in the Bronx are already through the roof, and the MTA's aware of this, so they're gonna spend money to try and fix it. In fact, the MTA's already agreed to spend $130 million of their profit on addressing pollution-related concerns that take place in the Bronx specifically. Okay, it's not profit, it's revenue, but what they're gonna do is they're gonna plant trees, they're gonna renovate parks, and they're also gonna controversially install air filtration systems in schools near areas of town that are gonna be hit with extra congestion. Like by busy highways and avenues where congested traffic is pretty much guaranteed to increase. And they're gonna spend $25 million on an asthma treatment program. So isn't this an admission of pollution redistribution if they're already gonna go and spend money fixing problems they know this is gonna cause? That's what this lawsuit is about. And the people living in outer boroughs don't have the millions necessary to buy a pricey condo here in Manhattan. And what's crazy is that not only is the pollution being moved from one area of town to another area of town, that area of town that's gonna receive the pollution is a middle-class area of town. This is a rich neighborhood. It's just gonna get better for the rich. But what about people who make the case that congestion pricing has worked in other major cities across the globe? Doesn't that mean that the same exact plan could work here in New York?
Because in the United States, we have interstate commerce. So we have to pay attention to the states around New York State. And in America, we have cars, and we have a whole different interstate system.
And she's right. America relies on interstate commerce in order to exist. And without residents of one state being able to freely do business with residents of another state without some strange penalty that only benefits one party over the other, this whole system wouldn't work. Your contractors wouldn't drive in to fix anything because it would be too expensive to fix your clogged toilet in your fancy apartment. On top of that, all the food that's served at your favorite favorite little cafes. The ingredients that go into that stuff isn't being produced here in the city. All those sugar-coated vegetables in your sweet green salad, those don't come from New York City. And to many people, rich folks driving around in their Ferraris don't need to breathe in better air than the rest of us. We should all breathe the same amounts of polluted air together. It should be fair.
And it's unfair. If it doesn't work for all New Yorkers, it doesn't work. You've got to reevaluate things.
Should middle-income, average, everyday New Yorkers pay fees so that the richest of the rich can have a better environment? And as mentioned earlier, there are many businesses that just cannot do business with the subway as their mode of transportation. Look at all these big trucks parked over here. Yes, these things are totally contributing to congestion. You can't even drive down this little street because there's so many trucks. And that's why it makes sense. These massive vehicles should pay more money because they're clogging up the streets. That's why their congestion toll is now higher. But if they're here for an essential purpose and they're just gonna pass the cost of doing business onto the customer, who's really paying that toll? The company with the truck or you and me? And the reason people are saying this is a tax on the poor is because everyone in the city is gonna be paying this whether they drive a car or a truck or not. You could be the best, most environmentally conscious New Yorker on the planet who takes the train everywhere, but everything you buy at CVS will cost more. Ditto everything sold by these little food trucks. But it's not just the EPA who's being sued. The city of New York's MTA is being sued as well. And wait till you hear why.
New York City's Teachers Union and Staten Island's borough president have teamed up to try to block congestion pricing.
They filed a lawsuit challenging the MTA's claims on how the program will improve air quality.
Interesting. So we've got teachers teaming up with Staten Island to also sue the city. You take the subway?
I take the subway.
So for you, it would be really good to have the subway be better.
I think they need to put more emphasis. Listen, I'm a native New Yorker. I've been here for. This reminds me of the 90s.
Wow, really?
This reminds me of the 90s. This is bad.
And you were in what, like middle school then?
I was 6, 7 years old.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. This is bad. This is bad.
In the other 4 boroughs, it's not improving any of that. In fact, the air quality is going to get worse. So we're taking the pollution from Midtown Manhattan and moving it to the Bronx, to Queens, to Brooklyn and Staten Island.
So this suit basically alleges that the air quality everywhere except Manhattan is gonna suck. Which means that the city could potentially be much worse off as a result of this plan. And the groups involved here think this is gonna hurt the city more than it's gonna help it. And the last thing they want is for the health of kids and communities outside of Manhattan to suffer. And I do like the idea that this is environmental injustice. We keep hearing about justice. Well, is it just to make kids sick in the Bronx or in Staten Island so that kids here have it a little bit better off? Many people would say there's absolutely no way that's fair. But this lawsuit hinges on the idea that proper studies were not done before this plan was approved, which makes it sound like this is something the local government wanted approved no matter what. And when you consider how much money is going to come from this, there are some people who think that is 100% what happened. That corners were cut to make this thing a reality when the reality of it is very different than what people think. What do you think's going to happen? Do you think congestion pricing is a good idea? Do you think a better subway and better air in Manhattan are the 2 goals it should accomplish? What about just a better subway? Would that be enough to have a better subway? Maybe the fees could be lower? Let me know what you think. I'll see you in the next video.